Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 9. In the last video, we managed to get our hands on some shiny new toys, and today, we will put them to use. Basically, we will get started on the final base design. Well, to be technical, we will start laying the foundations for it. The real end game base will be scattered over multiple planets, where we have individual ones dedicated to the production of a single resource, but for that, we will need to be interstellar, and we are only interplanetary at the moment. But hey, baby steps, right? Anyways, today we will sort out some of the basic smelting, and by the end, we will manage to get one of the most basic components into the logistics network, namely the magnetic coils. Apart from those goals, we will also do some small things around the place, like belting the ammo over to the dark fog farm. Before we get started, if this is not your first video from this channel, you already know what to expect. If you want to be kept up to date, please consider subscribing, and if you like what you see, leaving a like will also help letting me know what to focus on. But enough talking, let's get into it. Alright, let's get to it. We will continue placing towers along the equator, and slowly start replacing the old base with the new one. Oh, right. Before we get to that, we should try to do something about all the extra stuff we get from the dark fog farm. For example, we could recycle all the copper we get, by turning them into ammo. Use their own stuff against them. There we go. It will not be nearly enough to keep the belts fully saturated, but it will help ease the strain on our already overloaded starter base. We will not do anything with the other stuff today, but eventually we will likely put them into a logistics tower, and just shove everything into the network. Okay, now it's really time to get started. If we place them as close to each other as possible, while still adhering to the overall grid lines, we can get pretty much the perfect spacing for these towers, especially when it comes to smelting. For now, we will not copy-paste the entire setup over to the new ones. We don't have the technology to deal with so many individual buildings in a single blueprint. Thankfully, we only need the basics in these early stages. We only placed the third one, and we are already out of stuff. Time to go for a restock at the base. You know, I think we can get away with just having a single stack of these towers in the boxes. We don't need to overburden the base by making a chest full of them. Oh, right, we also need belts. For now, we will have just the basics: iron, copper, silicon, and titanium. Later on, we will also add in a tower for magnetic rings, since we will need those for the coils. And let's not forget to give the towers the vehicles they need. The drones are in short supply right now, but we have more than enough vessels. Next, we managed to pick up a couple planetary towers, which we will use to set up some mining operations around the place. Well, the resource deposit's a bit scattered, so it's not as easy as it looks, but we only need these towers around until we can get the advanced miners anyway. Let's start with this copper. It's really simple. Just place down the tower, set up the mines, and then feed them into the tower. Great. Now it's ready to start sending out the raw ores, and if we give it the drones it requires, it will immediately start doing just that. And off we go. This is always a momentous occasion in a game of DSP. Since we only have one place set up to receive raw copper ore, the drones automatically set out toward the destination. The smelting is still not ready to go though. We need to set up the filters for the output belts, so they know that they only meant to deliver the ores, not the plates. Next up, we also need power, in case the flashing warning icons didn't make it obvious. For now, the simple power poles will do the job. And here comes the part that everyone dreads when they first start using these towers. The absolutely colossal energy drain. These towers have a built-in battery that will give the power needed for the different logistics vehicles to make the trip between destinations. And it takes a lot of juice to get them up to full charge. And even after they are at maximum, they will still need constant replenishment, since they will constantly send out drones on deliveries. And because of all this, we need to upgrade our polar wind farm. Eventually, we would manage to charge up the towers, but why not make it faster if we can? Needless to say, this part was long and boring, so for everyone's benefit, I sped up the footage even more than usual, just to get it out of the way. Once I started seeing the deep red circles turning toward the orange, I knew that we are more or less okay. As the towers get close to being fully charged, the amount of power they take from the grid goes down, so the overall consumption will slowly settle down as they get closer to their maximum. With the power more or less sorted, it was time to boot up the actual smelters. The thing is, we have a lot of them, and setting them one by one would be madness, and thanks to their irregular inserter placements, we cannot just grab one to paste over the others. Thankfully, there is a button that lets us copy the recipe alone, without playing around with the ghost images. I just had to check the keybinds real quick to remind myself. There. It's the more than less than signs. And copper production on the network is operational. Let's move on. Let's take care of the iron next door. Since we had so many smelters set up already, using the ghost image copy-paste function was more viable. As we scale up production, the iron setup will be ready to get to work, the others will need a bit more copy pasting to reach their full potential though. And since we're here, let's take care of the other two real quick. We arrived with the ammo delivery just in time. The belts were already completely empty when we got here. Maybe these manual deliveries will not cut it in the long run. We will worry about the ammo later. For now, maybe we should take care of the titanium and silicon. It's nice that we have it all ready on the neighboring planets, but it would be even better if we didn't have to fly around to get some. Well, since we have the basics laid out, we only really need to place the tower, and redirect the belts toward that, instead of the smelters. In a second, we will also feed the finished plates into the tower, so they also become available for pickup, but for now, I wanted to take care of the belts, since we still had the old orange ones on this operation. And the mines are now all working at full capacity, trying their best to fill up the tower with ore. And looking at the tower interface, the fill bar had an orange segment on it, which means those items are reserved by an incoming logistics vessel. Let's wait for it, and see it land. Nice. We are now officially in interplanetary power. Now, about those finished plates. We don't have room in our inventory to move everything back ourselves, so the best option is to just move everything into the tower, and leave it up to the vessels to move it around as needed. The thing is, we still had a lot of plates inside the furnaces, and not enough room in the tower. I suppose we can just belt them in, and they will get emptied out eventually. The silicon operation was even bigger than the titanium, but it still only needed a single tower to take care of. That fog outpost on the red planet is getting a bit antsy. Let's take care of it before it becomes a bigger problem. Well, it seems the fog now started using flying units. Good thing we have the means to shoot them down. Hey, the missile launchers on our home planet just got into range, and decided to join in on the fun. Unfortunately, I didn't bring foundations with me, so we couldn't plug in the hole, but we managed to calm the outpost down, so that's a benefit, I suppose. Oh, right. We also need to set the output filters on these towers too. Only need to set 6 of them, so it should be quick. Now that we have smelted titanium on our home planet, we can start moving it around. For now, I did this manually, but later on we will leave this up to the towers. It was important to get this done. We need titanium for the yellow research, and the storage was well and truly empty at this point. With the logistics bots doing their thing, we had some time to take care of the ammo. If we belted it over to the farm, then we would no longer need to do it manually, freeing up quite a bit of time and headache on our part. We just need to go around the smelters, making sure not to block the space for the eventual expansion. Alright, things will settle down eventually. Once that chest is empty, we can pick it up. And what do we have here? That's new. Some kind of fuel source dropped by the dark fog. According to their description, they should not only give us power, but if we use this to fuel the mecha, it will also make the internal crafting speeds faster. Not bad. Anyways, with the research queue empty, it was time to set a new goal. And the most obvious choice was the satellite power poles. As I've said before, we will need them to take full advantage of the smelting setups we built. The drone production is really slow. The bottleneck is the engines. We need 2 assemblers to fully satisfy one drone factory, and we only have 1. Well, I suppose this will do for now. We just need enough of them to get started. Anyways, time to expand the logistics network. The next item was the magnetic rings, which we need to make the first assembled components, which of course are the coils. At this point, the only thing missing from this setup was a source of raw iron. We had everything else, except that. I really didn't want to mess with the already existing mines, those are still working with the old base, and we need that thing running until we reach the same level of development with the new setup. Until then, we need to rely on secondary sources. I suppose we could plop a couple towers down at the end of the old smelter arrays, to collect the runoff production. Might do that at a later date, but not today. And with that, we have raw iron in the network. Soon drones will come and pick up the ores. I didn't like how close the other dark fog base was to its threat maximum, so I decided to quickly take care of it before it decided to get any ideas. Once again, I forgot to bring foundations with me, but we managed to calm them down, so that's progress, I suppose. Damn, we are out of power. These dark fog fuel pellets are pretty poor when it comes down to it. The faster crafting time is just not worth the effort. We only need to wait until we get enough juice to reach space, after that we can coast at a slower speed. Oh, right. The magnetic ring tower has no drones. It can't pick up the raw iron without them. The bigger spacefaring vessels can only move things between planets, they cannot do planetary deliveries. Especially from a planetary tower, those can only accept drones. Anyways, I redirected the ammo line to merge into the ring after the assembler. We want to make sure we use the looted copper first, before we resort to the ones coming from the main base. With the higher level outpost, we are now starting to see some items appearing that are more complex than before. We even managed to loot a couple engines. I don't think we would run into any trouble if we just let this place overflow. We only really need this place to farm soil after all, but it would be nice to take advantage of all that loot. I still would very much prefer to make things myself if possible, but I also don't want to let all this go to waste. Anyways, I think it's time to start replacing those old titanium storage chests with some planetary towers. That way, we no longer need to make those deliveries by hand. But we definitely don't need these towers to be full. Maybe 500 units will be enough. The drones will try to keep the stocks at that level. If we pile all these titanium plates into the tower, we would go over that 500 unit limit we set. This just means that we won't see any deliveries made to it until it goes below that threshold, so if anything, it will save us some power. Unfortunately, we had no more towers available for pickup at the moment, so I had to pile in some silicon from the tower directly. Good thing we can operate these towers from anywhere on the planet, so we didn't need to fly back and forth. I guess it's time to set up the first proper manufacturing tower. We only used them for smelting until now. We just need to move the ammo belt over a bit to make room, and we can get started. The setup goes the same way as with the smelters. We use the resource slots to bring in the raw materials, and another one for the finished product. Now, magnetic coils need two components to make, so we cannot use the same single belt arrangement we used for the smelters. The middle belt will bring home the finished coils, while the two belts in the next lane will carry the copper and the magnets. And since we can place assemblers on either side of the component belts, we can place a third lane on the outside, which can also carry finished products back, giving us a nice array that can be 4 assemblers wide. Once again, never forget to set up the filters on the towers. Usually, we only need to do this once, since we would be copy-pasting the finished blueprints, but we are not quite there yet. With all the materials taken care of, we can extend the columns of assemblers. I didn't check the ratios just yet. We are not using the tier 3 assemblers, so there is no point in going for the perfect ratios just yet. And of course, we only used half of the available ports on the tower so far. We can replicate the same setup on the other side too. Very nice. We now have a steady supply of magnetic coils ready to be used. The only problem is that we are a bit hemmed in between the starter base and the dark fog farm. Good thing we know the spacing we are going for, so once we are ready to continue expanding, we can make sure we place things where they belong. Now, I was ready to stop recording here, but I noticed that the yellow science was really struggling. So, let's do the usual troubleshooting, and follow the chain back to the source of the problem. The problem was pretty obvious at a glance. Not enough refined oil. And looking at the refineries, the cause was immediately evident. We overproduced the hydrogen. Well, it was bound to happen sooner or later, and thankfully, it's a pretty easy fix. We just need to burn off the excess. If you remember, we switched all our thermo generators over to burning the oil not long ago, because at the time that was the main source of our headaches. Now, instead of taking generators off from that task, we should build extras for the hydrogen. Until we can switch over to the final refinery setup, we should keep things as foolproof as possible. There isn't much room, but this lake can go to make more. If I remember correctly, hydrogen isn't as energy dense as refined oil, so we don't need as many generators to burn off the excess. Well, we have some extra buildings we can place, so might as well use them all. We are getting there, but there is still room for improvement. Let's just keep adding more until we are out of generators. Yeah, I think we have enough capacity to burn off the excess at this point. Can't wait to have those gas giant harvesters available. That's the point where we no longer need to worry about getting rid of excess production. But I think we are at the end of the episode. We managed to sort out some of the basic smelting, but not all of them. We still need to do steel, bricks, glass, not to mention the titanium alloys. Then, we can start pushing everything we can into this ring of towers along the equator, and slowly work our way up to the point where we can completely disassemble the starter base. That's our main goal at the moment. We will put everything into the logistics network, and rely on the drones and vessels to move things around. In other factory games, the main artery of the base is usually a bus, similar to the one we used for the starter base. In DSP, that job is fully taken care of by the towers. Anyways, if you haven't done it already, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel, and leaving a like would also let me know that this video was worth making. If you feel that it was good enough, and you can afford it, please consider going to my Ko-fi page, which you can find in the description, and donate an amount that you feel is appropriate. And if you did like what you've seen, there should be links to some of my other videos and playlists on the screen. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.